Alright, greetings, y'all. Just wanted to give you all a post-election update on what's taking place in Zimbabwe, right? Now, as you all remember, in my previous video, in Zimbabwe, there was a coup which took place, which forced the resignation of Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe was the stalwart, the leader of Zimbabwe for many years, and it came to a point where some people felt it was necessary to oust him. They used military force to oust Robert Mugabe, and afterwards they had an election, right? Now the only thing is, during the election, the party that actually ran in the election was ZANU-PF, the same party that Robert Mugabe represented for many years, that he founded. Okay, so apparently there was an election debacle which took place. Initially, I had only heard about one death in the post-election protesting. But apparently after the election took place and there were cries of foul play, the soldiers were mobilized by Mnangagwa, by Mr. Mnangagwa, who was the newly elected president. Mr. Mnangagwa mobilized the police force and the soldiers, and they actually killed about 6 protesters. He wounded many others. Like I said, this is a distressing development. You know, one would hope that at 2018, politics on the continent would be immune to these types of things, but it happens around the world, so we can't really fault ourselves. And if people genuinely feel like there were improprieties at play, then I don't feel like they are wrong for making their voices heard on this matter. But basically, the update is that right now, Nelson Chamisa, who was the Democratic Party's leader, Nelson Chamisa has filed an election court challenge to challenge the validity of the election results. I think there were 2.46 million votes, over 2.15 million votes. So I guess he's trying to make up about, let's say about 310,000 votes. He's trying to find a way to erase that gap by claiming that there were improprieties. Let me just say one thing about the Democratic Party, you know, while we're on the subject. We know that in order for an opposition force to gain a lot of power in the current state of geopolitics, there has to be, in my opinion, some foreign backing. Okay? Now look at the name of this party. It's the Democratic Party. Right? Now, unless the leadership is pandering to America with the name, one can only assume that there's some type of collusion taking place regarding the Democratic Party's leadership. Okay? So this thing is not one-dimensional at all. Okay? Because on one hand, I do fault ZANU-PF for taking a more militarized stance against political protests. Right? I do fault ZANU-PF for allowing Robert Mugabe to be ousted in the manner he was ousted, after all of the accomplishments that he would have had, taking Africa, at least Zimbabwe, out of the clutches of colonialism and bringing it into some independence. Okay, now what you do with that independence, how you structure it, how you evolve it over time, depends entirely on the people and the leadership. But he actually took you to that stage where you could have the freedom, and then people turn their back on it. But in this case, I still wonder about this Democratic Party, and if this is just a US sanctioned party used to create chaos during the political process. Because as you all know, to be able to create instability in an African state is what the aim and objective of European nations and Western nations are. And the thing is, looking at this situation, it seems like clear political manipulation and subversion. And they want to create a situation where there is chaos. Perhaps there's some raw material that they would like to have more free access to. Okay? So we need to consider all of this. But right now there's an election court challenge in place. And Mr. Mnangagwa, the newly elected president, has issued a counter challenge which has to be responded to before the election court challenge. So they basically put some stalling tactics in place, I guess, so they can get their case together more firmly for the election court situation. But hopefully this is resolved without any improprieties being brought into light. Hopefully the people can have a peaceful government and they can move on with the business of their development. But let me know what your thoughts are about this whole situation. One love.